So here's the thing too, I'm going to just do this caveat. People want to get in with zero money down, but
they might not get all of them.
Yeah, we're also going to define default. If I don't pay you, what happens with
They want information on all of those and see what they're doing. It's a mess. It took a long time. We are not recording the second position, but rather...
This one's my favorite creative way.
I think that is a good spot to end. Welcome back. We are going to talk about the structures of Morby methods that we touched on in the first introduction video, and we want to do a deep dive on all of those. So we discussed that we have 4 methods that that are possibility in the first video, and I can reiterate those, and you can tell me if you have new information in a few weeks or you have found something else.
Okay, real estate is always new information, so I'm totally going to have new information. And I think that's a big disclaimer here too, you guys, is that the industry is always changing. And so even though we're talking about ways today, they might not work. And so it's always having that, again, like we have totally said in every episode, transparent conversations with the seller, and then just being transparent and figuring out how to make this work, because new legislation happens, regulation. And so we're always going to have new information. And like we were kind of talking off online, like now I'm meeting some other connections and they're like, hey, this is how we're doing it. And so then it's opening up possibilities. Now, granted, we're going to vet it first, see what they're doing. But yeah, I think we'll have probably like a part 2, even just like during this series, right? Is because we're always constantly learning and growing and how we can do these. So
sounds good. Yeah. We'll just go through the list that we have as is, and you can comment on those. So first one we had was partnering with the seller. So create an LLC with the seller and have them on the operating agreement. That way you're not recording a second position, but rather paying them off of the agreement itself.
Yeah. So that one, so being partners with the seller, that one is kind of, I'll say this one's my favorite creative in quotes for whoever's like watching versus listening, creative way, right? So obviously the easiest we'll talk about in a few minutes, but the most creative way for my brain is being partners on an LLC. So we're going to go buy a property together because you're selling me a property. And I go, cool, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to become partners on an LLC. I'm going to go get a DSCR loan with the LLC. And we're going to be joint on the LLC. 123 Main Street LLC. We're partners. Now I'm going to have all the controlling interest. You're just going to be more of a capital contributor, even though you're not really producing capital, or you're not contributing capital. But we're going to be on there together. Let's just say there's a $500,000 purchase price and you want $300 down. Awesome. Cool. I'm going to go get a DSCR loan to get you $300. Now, could we get it higher? Of course we can, right? Because then that's going to benefit me, but I know that you need to walk away with $300,000. And so then on that LLC operating agreement, I'm going to put your payment for your seller carry portion. Again, I'm doing air quotes, whoever's watch or listening. So your seller carry portion just becomes terms of the operating agreement. So I'm going to go, we're going to pay you $200 a month or whatever it is. And I owe you $200,000. So the term of that agreement, right? Until you're paid off. Maybe we negotiate some balloon payments, right? Maybe we negotiate. All of that is going to be outlined in that operating agreement tied to that LLC. We're also going to define default. If I don't pay you, what happens with the LLC? Do you get full ownership of the LLC? Do you not? What's the repayment or the recourse of that? Do I have 60 days, 90 days? All of that is going to be laid out in the operating agreement, just like it would be on a secured seller carry to title. Now, pro for the buyer, it's not secured to title. Con for the seller, it's not secured to title. However, pro for seller, it's secured via the operating agreement and we're partners, right? So if I default and it's laid out in whatever terms in that, you technically get to keep the property if that's what the recourse is, and I have to be removed from the LLC because I'm not paying you, right? So there's still pros to doing it that way, but it's us having that conversation, right away. And I think the biggest problem in Morbi's, well, I have a few opinions, but I feel like newer investors are using the strategy and they don't know how to negotiate and have those transparent conversations. And so that's where it needs to start, because it's like, oh, I would love to get you 300,000, but I have to go get a loan. And then this is what it's going to look like. Or then you're going in, let's just say the seller doesn't allow a second position. Then it goes, hey, the lender's not going to allow a second position, but this is how we can secure that money. Because I ultimately, right, as an investor, investors are there to help sellers. Yes, it benefits the investor, but we're trying to solve the seller's problem. And that is, I think, a mindset shift that needs to happen, because I think there's certain investors that think that way, but they don't totally think like, what is the best scenario and how can I protect the seller? Yes, it benefits me. Cool. I'm getting the tax benefits. I have a renter in there. I'm getting the cash flow, like all of these different things. But ultimately, having the transparent conversation with the seller and getting what they need to accomplish and making it win-win is the goal there. And so having that conversation and being like, seller, this is how we're going to do it. Hey, this is what's going to happen, if I default, and going through all of that, whether it's phone calls, Zooms, building that rapport so that you are going in there and the seller's feeling comfortable, because at the end of the day, that seller wanted 300 and you're solving that problem of giving them 300. And then you're also giving them payments for 200,000. Again, these are easy numbers, that we can just spit out. And I know we're going to have numbers for case studies in other episodes, but like for this one, that I like the strategy just because my mind as an investor, if I mess up, that seller has the property still, versus having to go through foreclosure, which in second position, are they going to get those funds? As long as it's not over leveraged, right? Because that first position DSCR is really going to be the one that has to foreclose first, right? Because they're going to want their money first. So to me, this could be more secure for the seller. Again, I'm not an attorney. Here's the weekly disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. This is my investor opinions. But to me, this does have more security for the seller versus the second position.
So in terms of protection, as you mentioned, the title goes on the LLC's name. The seller is not on the title, but it's all covered in the operating agreement. On the other side, my first question, if I am the seller, would be, I don't know you. You met me a month ago, and why would I be a partner, long-term partner, even for 5 years? I don't know what you're going to do with the property. I don't want to be liable for anything that you do as a landlord.
Yep.
What's the solution there? Is there an
Yeah.
answer, or that's just a conversation?
No, that's great. That's great questions. And that can be also outlined in the operating agreement. So, like I take tax benefits, you could put like, hey, I'm just a capital contributor. I'm not liable for anything, because really the operating agreement is almost like a contract, right? It's a contract for the LLC. And so there's the negotiating parts of it. Legality, right? That's also an attorney question of like, okay, what protections can we put there in the seller? Because like you said, you don't know what kind of landlord I am. But then it comes back to building that rapport where like, hey, seller, this is the best situation for you, in getting you the money that you need, right? And so then it just comes down to negotiating in that rapport. Because yeah, I met you a month ago. A lot of sellers are like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to get rid of this property, right? However, then it comes down to the negotiating and the rapport and the relationship there for that. And then for the security, right, on title, that LLC is on title. And so if they're a part of the operating agreement, they're secured to title. And then another thing too, kind of going back, like you said, like, I don't know, I don't want to be with you partners for 5 years. Well, depending on what is negotiated for, we're going to use that $200,000 again, right? So maybe it's a 3-year balloon. Maybe it's a 2-year balloon. So what could happen, because all those terms will be in that operating agreement. So let's just say you agree as a seller for 2 years. You're like, okay, I can like figure out this lady for 2 years, right? So after 2 years, you would just do a resolution to the operating agreement and the LLC, and you would remove yourself from the LLC. And so then there could be those documents of like, hey, seller, this isn't for life. This isn't like, this is just so I can get you your money. You're secured via the LLC so I can get you your money. And then you just do the resolution, remove them from the LLC, and then kind of go off of your merry way. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. From the funds perspective, if we were to look at this, so at the closing table uh, when we go there,
Mm-hmm.
it should be the same structure. There should be a transaction lender bringing in the down payment. There should be the DSCR lender bringing in the whole funds, and uh, at the closing, title company is going to send those funds back. Now, have we had these conversations with lender if this is okay, with DSCR lenders, if that is okay or not? So there is always a conversation about bringing a third party in, third
Yeah,
party funding.
totally bringing in a third party. So, I'm going to think of a few examples. I have a few examples, right? So one property that we did, he just brought his own money for the down payment. He was like, and then this is kind of also why I do say it is a strategy for more seasoned investors, because one, you can bring in your own money if you need to, right? So he brought in his own money. Now, granted, then even seasoned, it's the transactional lender, because a lot of investors mess up the underwriting with the transactional lender in there and paying back the transactional lender and their fee. And so that's why I say it's seasoned. But yes, so it does depend on the lender for the transactional lender. And I'm going to now pivot to one of our most recent ones is the lender, the DSCR lender wanted all of the assets, all of the information, like they're qualifying the buyer for their transactional funds. And then they even wanted them to be on the LLC as almost a cry. So it's so lender specific. And then I know we're pivoting a lot, but like then I know of a lender that allows a second position, but the buyer has to have skin in the game. So then it goes back into having your own funds for the down payment. Now, it doesn't have to be the whole down payment, it's a partial down payment. And so it's so lender specific, which is awesome, but also crazy at the same time. So it's hard to like be like, oh, you can totally just do it this way, right? It's like Morby methods are not in a box. It's like discombobulated, like, oh, we can do this here and this here, right? And so um yes, there are lenders that require certain things for the transactional lender to bring in those funds. And where they mess up a lot in the underwriting is, you know, I'm just going to throw out simple dummy numbers, but let's just say I need $50,000 in transactional funds, but your fee for that is $15,000. So total, right, is $65,000, and they don't underwrite that fee in there. And so those are the types of things that on a high level, when you really dive into the transaction, that people aren't necessarily thinking about, in my experience, right? And so that's why it's like finding a TC1 that knows there's a good group of TCs that know how to do Morby methods at a very high level. And so finding one of those um, that is going to like help, and then bringing them in as soon as possible, right? When you're like oh, escrow's already open, we already sent the contract to the lender and all this stuff, and you bring in a TC and the TC is like, what the heck here? Like, you gotta like, it's a team sport. Real estate is a team sport. And making sure that everyone is on the same page with that. Which then comes back down to the transparency. So
Yeah, for sure. The part you mentioned about lender requiring the documents as if the transaction or third party who's bringing the funds is a
mhm.
guarantor on the loan. We have one situation right now. They wanted 3 statements, and then since we are transactional lender, all
Yeah.
of our statements is going to say it's bigger amounts going in and out, in and out, in and out, and they want information on all of those and see what they are doing. Uh,
Mhm.
it's a mess. It
And then you
took a
have
long
to
time.
have a transactional lender that's willing to do that, because not all transactional lenders are going to be like, yeah, I'm an open, like, not that anyone is doing anything wrong, but like, they're like, hey, I'm just trying to bring funds to this transaction. Why are you having the microscope on me? And so you have to have the good relationship with your transactional lender of going, hey, this lender can get it done, but it's kind of a pain in the butt because now it's more work for you. So in my mind as an investor, right, I'd be like, okay, more work for me. I'm going to charge a higher fee for you to borrow my money because now microscopes on me like I'm borrowing that loan and my money should be staying in escrow.
Yeah, makes sense. Second strategy we mentioned for doing a Morby method was recording a default.
Yeah, getting a servicing company and only recording the second position if there's default.
Yeah, so I myself didn't understand that on the first
Yeah.
round. So yeah, can
Yeah.
we?
Okay. So another option, again, disclaimer, always do your own research and I'm not an attorney, but here's another creative way. And this is, I would say another, I guess, one of my favorites because I live in creative, but another strategy would be to get the DSCR loan, go through that process, right? And then have a servicer, so a third party payment servicer, hold the pre-signed deed of trust for a second position. So we'll just use simple numbers again. So we get the loan for $300 and I owe you $200,000. So a servicer could hold a pre-signed deed of trust. And so that if I default, definition of default in that promissory note that's attached with that deed of trust, if for some reason I default on your payments, then they would record that lien. So then the lien would show on the property. So basically, and the parties shouldn't hold those documents. That's why I'm saying a third party servicer. Sometimes escrow will hold it. Escrow companies will provide that kind of more servicing service. But it would be like a Westar or a Madison Management. Like there's numerous different servicers, but the payments would still be going to you, right? Because you would set up servicing. So my 200 monthly would go to you. And for some reason, if I stopped, then you would go record the lien so that you're then secured to title, right? Because then if I can't, pay you or whatever, and I have to sell the property, your lien would show up being you need to be satisfied. Now here's the thing, here's the con and the kicker about that, right? You got to pay for servicing. And then it goes back into if I am defaulting for you, I'm probably defaulting on the first position, and the first position is going to want their money first, right? So then it goes into the underwriting, and I know that this kind of all comes back to the underwriting of what's the ARV on the property, what's the debt to the property, right? That's why over leveraging properties is not smart, and that's where lenders freak out too, right? Is if we're buying it for 500,000 and it's worth $1 million, okay, well that's a freaking awesome deal, right? But there's room if I have to sell it because I'm defaulting, the first is going to be paid off and the second. Now, if I'm buying it for 500 and it's appraised at 500 and the ARV is 500 and I'm defaulting and I have to fire sale that, you're not going to be made whole because there's not going to be enough skin in the game, right? And so those are the types of things too that are being missed. And so it would be what I was calling a delayed second, which I know that there's still a whole other strategy for a delayed second, but it would basically just be recorded if I'm defaulting. So then it would be tied to the loan so that hopefully you could get your money back. Underline hopefully, because again, it's going to depend on numbers and stuff. And to me, yes, it's creative, but I don't totally love it. Because to me, that's not enough security for the seller.
Thing with
Now,
that would with Morby method in general, that would apply. Like seller will always be in second position, and they will, if the properties are over leveraged, they might not get all of their money
yeah,
back. So
yeah, and that exactly right. That's always the case for Morbies, but this is also why it's only recorded if there's default. And so that's the other part like that I don't like about it, of like, because you're kind of already in a crappy situation versus like they're recorded from the beginning. And so then if you jump into the mindset of the seller, right, that seller is going to be more frantic, right? Oh my gosh, I'm not getting my monthly payments. Oh my gosh, I'm not secured to title. Oh my, like, right. So that's why I don't love it. But what you said is totally like, they're always in second position, but it's more of a frantic security of, oh my gosh, I got to try and get my money back versus like, hey, I'm going to give you your money right away. So it's a strategy. I don't love it on the seller side.
Yeah. One more thing that I can think of on the seller side is, and I'm not sure if this can be covered in the servicing agreement or with the servicer. Uh, you can be making payments to the seller, but you can still default on the first position lender. What happens in that case?
That's a great question. I've never had that happen. So, but let's just walk through it, right? So, okay, let's say my payment to you is 200 and I'm paying you. First needs to foreclose. That's a great question. I'd have to ask title what would happen with there, because I haven't, my brain goes to, they're gonna foreclose, they're gonna pull a title report, they're gonna see you.
They're not going to see the seller because it's not recorded, right? If they pull the
Well,
title.
no, if it's not recorded. If it is recorded, they would see the seller, but yeah, they would foreclose. And then,
So that somehow has to, it
for
either
lack
has to
of
be.
better terms, I think the seller would be shit out of luck. Now, granted, I want to do more research on that, right? I'll do more research on that. But to me, if they foreclose and they take the property, and let's just say it goes to someone else, and they're still paying that $200, it's not recorded anywhere. Now, let's just say they end up defaulting and they try and record it, but that person no longer owns the property. Could they record it? I don't know. You stumped me.
I'm not sure if that's something servicing companies offer, but it it could be that they also look for payment confirmation uh,
Yeah.
directly to the seller, because that's how you do in sub 2, right? If you take over property subject to you, the servicing company will be giving the proof to the seller, and if the uh, buyer investor fails to make the payment, then the deed goes directly to the seller.
In most cases, yes. Sometimes it's not set up that way, that it should be set up that way. But it's, yes, it should go back. But see, some sellers too. So like let's just like dive into that a little bit. So we had a situation, we TC'd a deal, and we were the TC for the wholesaler, not the end buyer. End buyer bought it. They were going to turn it into a rental. We get an email 6 months later from the seller, right? Because we were the middle person. Hey, I'm getting notifications that my mortgage isn't being paid. And so the end buyer was defaulting and not making the payment. So she had already been in default. She already had arrears. And so it flags faster. And so we got stuck in the middle of, yo, end buyer, why aren't you paying? You need to pay, right? The seller didn't want the house back. Seller just wanted that to be paid, right? And so, yes, it can be deeded back to them, right? But most of the time they don't want it. And so then what? Then it's a conversation of, and all of this leads back to like ethics and just be a good person and pay your bills, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, we see that kind of stuff happen, and it's the sellers, but they're like, no, don't give it back to me. Like, I don't want it, right? I wanted to get rid of it. So, you know, could the wholesaler jump in and get it back? Like there's other things that can happen. But yeah, you stumped me on that one. I wrote it down. I'm going to do some research on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from the funds perspective, it will still work the same way like any other Morby method. You bring the down payment, or the third party brings in the down payment,
Mm-hmm.
lender, funds get back, and then everyone goes there.
Yeah. That front side is still the same. Um, depending on the transactional lender, and if you're bringing your own, that front end is still totally, it's just the back end. And a lot of these are going to be the same. Of the front end is mostly going to be the same. It's just that back end piece that is what pivots. So, and obviously the easiest strategy is when that lender allows a second position mortgage and you just do one fell swoop transaction and it's like good as gravy and it's fine. That's obviously the easiest. Yeah. And the easiest for the TCs too, right? Like we're not like, okay, we can't talk about the second or, all of this stuff, right? So that's obviously the easiest.
Yeah. We can go into the third one then, the delayed seller carry.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
yeah, you already mentioned alluded to that with the second strategy that we were talking about, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's
So
get that out.
another strategy would be what I call, you guys, these aren't even like fancy terms either, right? It's just a delayed seller carry. So going through the first part, right? DSCR, if you have a transactional lender, if you don't, obviously, the first part stays the same. But the delayed seller carry would be, again, a transparent conversation with the seller saying, hey, we're going to wait 6 months to record this. I'm still going to pay you, but we're just going to wait 6 months. And so then as the seller and the buyer, right, they got to have a good relationship because, hey, 6 months, hey, seller, I just want to let you know we're going through the title process, we're working with title, like we're going to loop you back in and do that delayed seller carry. And here's why I say delayed is because the DSCR, if they don't want a second position, right, like, hey, they don't want a second position. Okay. Well, once you close, it's closed. Who cares? Like, and this is again me from the investor side, right? Or like a HELOC. If on my primary home, I need a HELOC, or I'm in a fix and flip and I just do a DSCR and I need extra funds, I got to go secure a HELOC. Well, I'm going to secure a HELOC. I don't go back to the lender and ask for permission, right? Hey, I
Yeah,
need some more funds, right? Like, so I just, this one is like, obviously the seller and the buyer have to have trust back and forth of that this is going to be done. Now, is 6 months right? Is it a month? Is it 12 months? That's going to go off of what was negotiated, and I'm going to say the risk tolerance, because right now, and why things have kind of been changing in that Morby Method arena, is because DSCR lenders are finding out that seconds are getting recorded and then they're calling it due. And so what is the appropriate time? That's going to depend on the lender. What is the term? Like all of that makes a factor. And so it just comes down to risk tolerance of like, hey, I'm willing, 6 months later to do it. I'm willing 12 months later. I'm willing a month later. I'm willing a day later, right? That comes down to what the investor is willing to do. And also, I've had lenders say, okay, just record it a week later. I've had lenders say record it the day after, like, so that is an open conversation, but it's just a delayed recording of that seller carry portion. Maybe they pay a little bit more to have it delayed. I don't know, right? Excuse me. So if you wanted 200 and I said, hey, I can't record this for 6 months, but I'm going to give you 215 instead, then you as the seller would have to go, hey, I'll take 215 to wait 6 months. And then it's just, again, that transparent conversation of going back to title and getting it done.
So one question I would have there is, if there is a delay, what happens to the funds perspective? Because you're not recording a second position. So how does title handle the funds transfer or the down payment? Who brought the down payment? If the seller brought the down payment in, or if the transactional lender, I don't think it can be a transactional lender at that point. It will have to be a partner who is willing to stay in for 6 months or so.
So you could do escrow holdback instructions. Yeah, like that transactional lender is probably in this situation, because so here's the thing too, I'm going to just do this caveat, right? People want to get in with zero money down, but they still have money. They just don't want to use their money, which I think is annoying. And I'm just going to put that in that little sack in there, right? Like, you're an investor and I get it. There's a purpose to do it. I do. I understand both sides. Me, I'm just going to use my own money. It's easier, right? If I lose my own money and my own default and my down payment, who am I disappointing the most? Myself, right? Now, granted, there's situations where like, yeah, I'll borrow money, but like, holy smokes, I know that I can I don't want to let someone else down. That's just me. So yes, you'd probably have to use your own funds. You could still technically use a transactional lender, but then it gets a little like, I'm going to just call it muddy, right? Because, okay, transactional lender, and then we talk about, right, funds, some of those funds aren't coming back. So then is there a payment plan for your transactional lender for what is missing? Possibly. I mean, there's ways to get creative in that sense. But yeah, it's delayed. And so for me, right, if I'm going to do that, you know, again, investors, you have to track and you have to manage your assets. And so then people aren't prepared for, not everyone's prepared for that, right? So it's like, okay, cool, 6 month seller carry delayed, I'm going to set a timer at month 5, right? I should be giving probably updates to you anyway because I owe you $200,000, right? Hey, we did this, it's a fix and flip, or maybe it's not, it's a long-term hold. We should be talking, right? Because I still owe you $200,000. I should be paying you monthly, right? Hey, Mr. Seller, I got you your money. Here's, if you don't see it in your account, let me know, right? There should be that kind of relationship anyway, because we borrowed, or, they're financing that money. So, hey, month 5, hey, seller, I just want to let you know we opened title. Be expecting an email from title. We're going to get this second position secured, like we said we were going to do. And so then title would open again, right? They would prepare the promissory note, the deed of trust or mortgage, whatever kind of state it is. Some states are deed of trust states, some are mortgage states. And so then you're working with title, and it's that full transparency of going, hey, this is how we're going to do it. But yeah, on that transactional side, it's going to depend on, do you have, what's the skin in the game? Okay, cool. Like it, that's going to depend, right? Because it's not being reimbursed. So
Yeah. So yeah, you either need a long-term partner or
mhm.
your own funds.
Yeah.
And
Or
since
you could refinance out. So transactional lender, let's get creative here. Hey, transactional lender, you're going to get most of your money back, but I'm going to balloon you in 6 months, or I'm going to balloon you or maybe it costs more. Maybe instead of it costing, let's just say 10,000, and I'm going to pay you $20,000 because you're not getting all your money back. It's totally, I mean, that's when you kind of get into the creative of like, but yeah, a private money partner would be the best, right? But yeah, other ideas.
since the money is held inside of escrow, the you don't really need a servicing company at that delay stage in that first 6 months. Let's say, if you're taking an example of 6 months delay, you don't need anyone in between since the funds are held in escrow.
Mm-mm.
They can just do it. Yeah.
No, you don't. And like the other thing too, unless the seller's really adamant on it, right? If that's the only way to get the seller to do it, because you could have an agreement. Hey, seller, I'm going to Zelle you your monthly payment, or this is how you're going to get your monthly payment every month. I mean, people do that for PMLs all the time, and they don't have servicing for PMLs, and so same thing. So it doesn't actually you wouldn't need a servicer unless like the seller was very adamant on it. But most likely they're going to want that the whole life of the loan. And so if you're doing a delayed seller carry, let's just say, and you go to set up servicing, let's just say even after 6 months, and they want it set up when the payments start. Maybe they're delayed payments, maybe they're not. That servicing company is going to want proof of all of those other prior payments to know that the loan is current. And so then you as the borrower or the buyer need to know, hey, I got to have my ducks in a row of like, okay, they're going to want 1 through 5 payment to show, hey, that it's not in default, right? And so you just have to be prepared to provide that information to servicing. But no, you don't need servicing. And
Yeah.
I'm a proponent too. I'm not a proponent of servicing only when it's absolutely needed, just because there's cons to it as well. Now, granted, it's a great strategy. People use it all the time. It's just not my favorite.
Yeah, it's just only because it will add additional cost and won't may
No
not necessarily.
cost. And when you're doing like a sub two, which I know this is like a little derail, but when you're doing a sub two, if your taxes go up, they're not notified that your taxes go up. So if you're taking out $2,500 for that mortgage payment and your taxes go up and now your payment's 27, they're still taking away 2,500. So you still have to babysit it. And so it's like if you have to babysit it, you might as well just be making the payments yourself on auto pay. Like you're going to get notification on auto pay 10 times faster than oh shoot, there's $5,000 worth of late payments, or like what. So to me, I just be a responsible human being. You're an investor. We're in real estate. Like, come on.
Yeah, makes sense.
Rant over.
The last one we are coming to is the lender that find a lender that allows second position.
Oh, the
And
easiest. I love this one. Yay. Finding a lender that allows a second position. There are lenders out there. I'm starting to have more conversations with lenders that allow them, but what does that look like, right? I know a lender that allows a second, but you have to have skin in the game. Is there a lender that allows a second that you don't have to have skin in the game? And so there will be resources below for that. But yeah, that's the easiest thing. Easy peasy lemon squeezy on that.
yeah, no special considerations needed. Everyone goes home happy.
No.
Yeah, I think
Awesome.
that is a good spot to end for this one.